gave me a huge task here. I hope I can live up to it. We'll try it. We'll see what we can do. Erev Tov, good evening, everyone, and thank you for spending part of your week with us here. So by means of introduction, since this topic is incredibly broad, we are, I think, at an extraordinary moment in history today, whether you call it a turning point or a tipping point, or even a paradigm shift in consciousness. And there are tremendous and far-reaching implications both within the Jewish people and in the development and cultivations of relationships within the larger world of faith communities. So there are many questions we want to ask here. For instance, what are the real separations between us? And what theological differences, while perhaps weighty, are artificial? We have, I think, a contemporary mindset that doesn't allow us very easily to hold on to contradictions and subtleties very well. We seem to have less room in our minds for mystery and paradox, and we tend to want answers in concrete terms. Therefore, it makes it harder to see things in terms of either or this and this. We tend to want to know what's this and what's the other, one or the other. There's a beautiful teaching I'm reminded of from the Talmud, from the Gemara, from Eruvin 13, which says, Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim Chaim. Both this and this are the ways of the living God. And of course that refers to the debates within the houses of Hillel and Shammai. But I suspect we can apply it in other situations, and perhaps the panelists will have something to say about that. But permit me just, by means of introduction, a little bit of personal reflection. So I grew up as an Orthodox Jew, 37th generation, and my family ordained, the first woman in my family. And the world that I grew up in was a much more insular world than the world that I live in right now. And many adventures and many studies later, I find myself venturing across lines that once were concrete boundaries for me, both as a Jew and certainly as a rabbi. And when I first studied Judaism, my people, my religion, my way of life, in a secular academic environment, whole new worlds were opened up to me, along with the necessity of confronting misconceptions and images, fears even, yet still bearing heavily the weight of the Jewish collective experience and what our people has endured and experienced, the pain, the persecutions, and the light and the joy. So new questions, new possibilities, yet none of them changed essentially who I am or what I believe. And I guess for me, that's the point. Because of who I am, and through my knowledge of Jewish texts and teaching, I need to ask what it is that I'm meant to do in the world in terms of teaching and learning and healing. And I think these are questions for all of us. During my tenure as president of the Board of Rabbis, I was drawn into conversations I never thought I would have, I never imagined. And I welcomed into my home over 60 faith leaders from different non-Jewish religions. And I wondered if my grandfather, may he rest in peace, would have rolled over in his grave knowing that 6 imams once knelt on my yoga mats and exercise mats in my home to pray at their appointed time, surrounded in a room by sacred Jewish texts and other works such as that old classic, The Zionist Idea. Stomach turn. Well, my grandfather was a man of his time, and I'm a woman of mine. And one last note here. My congregation Kila, is about to embark on a new phase in our journey and development, and will likely be moving later this spring to North Scottsdale, sharing a campus with the Methodist Church. Now, it's not unusual for churches and synagogues to share space, but it is far less common to enter into a sacred relationship. Not so much a rental as a holy opportunity and mission even to do some real social justice work and hopefully make our mark in making significant differences and changes in our community, as well as in the individual lives of our members. Whatever, it will be an adventure. So in Kohelet, in Ecclesiastes, we're taught that there's a time to break down and a time to build up. I think many have sensed that we've arrived at a time for building up relationships between church and synagogue. And can we, should we, learn to leave at least some of our differences at the door? Can we celebrate and share and work together both for understanding and for social justice and healing all that which is broken in our world? And can we have the truly difficult conversations? Tonight's topic is Jewish theological and practical approaches to relationships with other religions. And other religions, of course, extends beyond Christianity, with which we have more experience, and also to Islam and to Eastern religions. The topic is so very broad and so relevant. To frame the conversation a little bit, there's an important work entitled Jewish Theology and World Religions. The editors Goshen, Gottstein, and Korn write that, quote, Jewish thinking regarding other religions has not succeeded in keeping pace with the contemporary realities that regularly confront most Jews, nor has it adequately assimilated the ways in which other religions have changed their teachings about Jews and Judaism. Are we multiple religions with multiple paths, but one God and one goal? How do we get to truth? And is our truth the universal truth, or is it a particularistic truth? And is striving towards truth mutually exclusive with an appreciation of the other? Can we enter into these difficult conversations where the sacred texts and theologies of different religions do not support attempts to celebrate what we hold in common? And is there a Jewish theology, and are there sacred texts to guide us in approaching other religions? So much to think about. So let me introduce our panelists. I did this in alphabetical order. First, Rabbi Alana Cantor, in the middle. You can figure out which one Alana is. Director of the Women's Jewish Learning Center. Rabbi Cantor is a remarkable human being. All my colleagues are remarkable human beings, but we have a special friendship. And she's a graduate of Barnard College and a member of the very first class of women rabbis of the Jewish Theological Seminary, the conservative movement. Rabbi Cantor was ordained in 1989, and she's also co-rabbi of the New Shul. In 1998, Rabbi Cantor received the Covenant Award for exceptional Jewish education for her work in adult Jewish learning. Rabbi Cantor's published numerous articles and works, many of them in the field of Jewish education. To our far left is our host here at Temple Salel this evening, Rabbi John Linder, who grew up in Buffalo, New York, and considers himself a lifelong Buffalo booster. I have no idea what that is. Well, that I knew. I read the Jewish news. I read about that. But though having lived in the Valley of the Sun since 2008, he really doesn't miss shoveling snow. How do you like raking your weeds, though? Before coming to Temple Salel, Rabbi Linder served as rabbi at Congregation B'nai Yoshua Beth Elohim in Glenview, Illinois. Rabbi Linder received a master's in Hebrew letters and was ordained at the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion in Cincinnati in 2003. He graduated in 1980 cum laude from Amherst College and became a rabbi at age 46. That's one of the things that we share in common, both being second career rabbis. Rabbi Linder was a community and labor organizer and executive in his family's scrap metal recycling business in Buffalo. His bride of 28 years is Nancy Linder, and their son, David Joel, is a senior at ASU's Barrett Honors College. And finally, to my left is Rabbi Dr. Rabbi Robert. Am I supposed to use Rabbi or Doctor first? I always
call me Bob.
Rabbi Dr. Robert Kravitz worked as coordinator of hospital chaplaincy for Jewish Family and Children's Service. For nearly 2 decades prior, he served as the Arizona executive of an international human rights public policy organization, representing them in local and national media. He was a broadcast journalism graduate of Syracuse University and produced radio and TV programs, I didn't know that about you until I read this, in New York and Arizona, and writes a column for City Sun-Times. Rabbi Kravitz earned his master's degree and was ordained a rabbi by Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion, and in 1999 he received the prestigious Doctor of Divinity degree, honors causa. Rabbi Kravitz has served congregations in New York, Georgia, and North Dakota before moving to Phoenix in 1987. He served as an adjunct faculty member at several universities and offered chaplaincy services to U.S. force based in Georgia and in Fargo. I didn't know you were very cold. Yeah. Rabbi Kravitz has held significant leadership positions in Metro Phoenix, chairman of the City of Phoenix Human Relations Commission, and vice chairman Taser International Foundation for Fallen Officers, a board member of Arizonans for a Martin Luther King Civil Rights Holiday, founding director, FBI Citizens Academy, and regional board member of the Anti-Defamation League. He's actively involved with the Phoenix Sister Cities Ramat Gan Israel Committee and the International Conference of Police Chaplains. Currently, he serves as treasurer of the Board of Rabbis of Greater Phoenix. Rabbi Kravitz also volunteers as a trained master chaplain for several police departments, Phoenix and Scottsdale, two of them, although he retired his badge in Phoenix after 20 years. So thank you very much for joining us, everyone, and we are going to now have approximately 8 minutes of presentation from each of our panelists, and we can start with Rabbi Cantor. Rabbi, thank you. Thank you. Can you all hear? Is this? I don't know if they're okay.
Is this on? Yeah. Great. So I am honored to be with my colleagues on this panel and to be here with all of you and to talk about this important topic. And I'm particularly grateful that my parents, Rabbi Shammai and Jeanette Cantor, could be with us this evening as well. I think that the default position in the liberal Jewish world is openness and curiosity and interest in other religions. I think it's actually a little ironic because I think that in many cases Jews can be much more open toward other religions sometimes than they are towards their own. But we could talk about that another evening. But I think that openness comes from some profound voices in our tradition. And I want to share with you one of them from a midrash on the book of Vayikra called the Sifra, an ancient text. And it says this. Rabbi Yirmiyah says, "From where do we know that even a non-Jew who observes the Torah is like a high priest? From the verse that teaches that a person shall do them and live by them. Similarly, it does not say, and this is the Torah of priests, Levites, and Israelites, but rather it says, this is the Torah of human beings. And similarly, it says, open ye gates, not that priests, Levites, and Israelites may enter, but that the righteous nation may enter." And the Midrash goes on to say, to show us that the highest value is not Jewishness. It's not being a Kohen, a Levi, or Yisrael, a priest, a Levite, or an Israelite. But rather it's about righteousness as a highest value. And Heschel, in a very, very famous essay called No Religion is an Island, I think said it very well when he said, religion is a means, not the end. In other words, Judaism is a means to that highest self, those highest values that we share. It becomes idolatrous when regarded as an end in itself. Over and above all stands the Creator and Lord of history who transcends all. To equate religion and God is idolatry. So this openness to other religions and a skepticism about creating an idol of our own is well represented within our tradition. And in some ways, I think the rabbis here are going to agree very much on that open approach. But I did think it was important to mention that there are groups of Jews who are not open to having relationships and dialogues with non-Jews. I think we have to recognize that. That's very much in our tradition as well. And that there are groups of Jews who don't see value in the non-Jewish world. I think most of us would dismiss that immediately, but even in our Phoenix, Arizona, larger Jewish community, I think there are people who think that Jewish souls are holier than non-Jewish souls. There is that idea out there. It's important for us to be aware of it as Jews, and not to just assume because we're open, liberal-minded people that all Jews think like that. But I think there's a second kind of Jew who is also not open to interfaith dialogue. And that is a group of Jews whose hold on their own religion is so tenuous that they don't want to talk to other people of other religions because that may cause me to lose my own faith. And again, I think Heschel said it very well when he said that, let me just see where Heschel said it, the first and most important prerequisite of interfaith is faith. Right? You have to know your own faith in order order to be able to talk to others about theirs. It's only out of the depth of involvement, says Heschel, that we can help one another toward an understanding of our situation. Interfaith must come out of depth, not out of a void absence of faith. It's not an enterprise for those who are half-learned or spiritually immature. So I think Heschel is saying that you can only truly dialogue with others if you have some understanding of your own faith and your own religion. So what is a starting place for those of us who believe what the rabbi said, who is wise, the one who learns from all people? If we really take that seriously, for those of us for whom that is a guiding principle, how do we sustain two things? On the one hand, an openness to the other. On the other hand, a recognition of the uniqueness of our own tradition. And I think that is the question. And Heschel said that the starting point for interfaith dialogue is fear and trembling and humility. I think that we need a posture of humility towards others because we're not insiders on somebody else's religion. So we have to come at it with a sense of being a student. And by taking that posture of humility, we've saved ourselves both from the idolatry toward our own religion, but also from misunderstanding or misinterpreting somebody else's religion. First is to understand and to begin from that posture of humility. I think the second thing is to understand that we had a speaker here, I think it was last year at ASU, Stephen Prothero. He wrote a book, God is Not One. And in it, he makes the case that there are real differences between religions. And this is what he says. Mystics often claim that the great religions differ only in inessentials. They may be different paths, but they are ascending the same mountain and they converge at the peak. But my focus, he's talking about his research, on ordinary religious folk, the stories they tell, the doctrines they affirm, and the rituals they practice. And these stories, doctrines, and rituals could not be more different. Christians do not go on Hajj to Mecca. Jews do not affirm the doctrine of the Trinity. And neither Buddhists nor Hindus trouble themselves about sin or salvation. And Professor Prothero goes on to say that in his research, he really believes that we need to celebrate those differences and not gloss them over, not say that we're all the same. So humility and then affirming of differences. And lastly, and let me quote Heschel one more time, what is the purpose of interreligious cooperation? It is neither to flatter nor to refute one another, but to help one another, to share insight and learning, to cooperate, and what is even more important, to search in the wilderness for well springs of devotion, for treasures of stillness, for the power of love and care of man. I think that searching for well springs of devotion. So I want to just conclude my remarks by telling you a story of something that happened to me in high school. I went to a school that at the time had very few Jews. I was one of the only Jews in my class and one of a few Jews in the school. And in my English class was this young man, Stephen Hill, of blessed memory. And one day, Stephen in class said, well, he's a devout Catholic, on his way, seriously thinking about becoming a monk. And he said, the Pope at the time of the Holocaust did not have to speak out about the Holocaust, did not have to speak out on behalf of the Jews, because it already says in the Bible, thou shalt not kill. So at the time, I felt myself getting physically nauseous. And I said to him after class, it's because of people like you that it happened once, and it's because of people like you that it could happen again. And, and then I left the class. The next day, I got a letter from him, and this is what he wrote. I have a favorite prayer, the prayer of St. Francis. It goes, O Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be understood as to understand. I understand why I upset you. I made a tactless, misplaced remark which caused you a great deal of pain, and for this I ask your forgiveness. However, please do not ask me to apologize for my faith or my trust in the Catholic Church. I'm a Catholic. I am, to the best of my ability, always one. Do not ask me to give this up. And please try to understand why I feel the way that I do, for I believe I understand why you reacted the way you do. We may have different churches, different leaders and fathers, pope and rabbi, but we both pray to the same God. So let us be at peace in that love, our God. Please forgive me and try to understand. May our Lord and common Father bless you, Stephen Hill. We became friends, and but it was a friendship, not so much as Stephen actually said in the letter. It was a friendship not so much based on this, the Father in heaven that we shared, but at least for me, he was a wellspring of devotion that inspired me in my life. And so it's on that basis, humility, difference, and an inspiration that we can take from others of faith, that I think we can approach other religions with openness and curiosity and interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Cantor. Now I'll invite Rabbi Robert Kravitz to share his perspectives.
A rabbi and a priest get into a car accident, and it's a bad one. Both cars are totally demolished, but amazingly, neither one of the clerics is hurt. After they crawl out of their cars, the rabbi sees the priest's collar and says, "Oh, so you're a priest. I'm a rabbi. Just look at our cars. They're completely demolished, but we're unhurt. It must be a sign from God. God must have meant that we should meet and become friends and live together in peace for the rest of our days." The priest replies, "I agree with you completely. It must be a sign from God." The rabbi continues, "And look at this. Here's another miracle. My car is completely demolished, but this bottle of Manischewitz isn't even broken. Surely God wants us to drink wine and celebrate our good fortune." And he hands the bottle to the priest. The priest agrees, takes a few swigs, hands the bottle back to the rabbi. The rabbi takes the bottle, caps it off, and hands it back to the priest. The priest asks, "Aren't you having any?" The rabbi replies, "No, I think I'll wait for the police." We sometimes don't understand each other well. Interfaith activities can be very exciting. They can be very dynamic. And in the case of my life, I've been involved in interfaith activity for better than 50 years now. Rabbis have a certain autonomy that other groups don't have, or other religious leaders don't have. And because of that, we're often looked at by those folks as representing absolutely everything in our tradition. It's the al regel achat. It's standing on one foot, tell me everything you know. And that's a challenge. Yes, we know who we are, hopefully. We may know who our neighbor is, the person we're addressing or who's addressing us. But the question is,